Standing at the top of the hollow, Jeff looked down on his past. Across the way stood the cabin, facing away from him, the back door shut and the windows boarded up. Around him, towering tulip poplars reached skywards hundreds of feet, bark flat and gray and trunks wide enough to require 3 men grasping hands to circle their girth. Down in the bottoms, mountain laurel huddled evergreen along the trickle of creek. Time to go home. The incline was steeper than he recalled, but he ascended the hill to stand outside the back door. The cabin was sturdy, built of logs and chinked together with ancient red clay. Jeff walked around to the front, stepped up to the covered porch, and looked out at the view. Dusk was settling on overgrown fields that ran flat for 10 acres, now gone to grass and brambles. Forest began again across the way, tall, lush pine, creating majestic towers with dark caverns of shadow beneath. To the north, a trail cut through poplars, oak, and hickory trees, and to the south lay a row of moldering hay bales. The barn was small, another log erection, but the chinking had long since fallen and decayed. It had been decades since Pop had kept horses there. The door opened with the turn of an old skeleton key and a good shove. Dust enveloped him, and a musty, woody scent invaded his clothes and nostrils. Jeff breathed in deeply and coughed, but smiled. It still smells the same, he thought. Reaching into his bag, Jeff pulled out a flashlight. He found oil lamps in the kitchen and set them to life. The main room had a massive wood stove, which he filled with kindling and logs from the porch. The room warmed, and he relaxed slightly and looked around. Nothing had changed in the 5 years since he'd last been here. His cousin John came out to hunt now and then, and must have taken care of things. The place felt like home, but empty at the same time. Pop died 4 years and 200 days ago, but really, his soul had left his body on the day they took him out of the homestead and into the home. Jeff missed him more than he cared to admit. His own life was over. He was just there to say goodbye to memories. The kitchen was filled with thoughts of Mom and her baking, clanking pans and humming some old hymn. Jeff could almost feel her there beside him, ready to whack him with a wooden spoon. The loft lured him to recall his childhood, but Jeff turned away and looked instead to Pop's chair by the stove. He pulled the blanket off and eased into the ancient leather recliner. Leaning back, he could almost smell Pop's tobacco pipe smoke. He knew he would be a disappointment if his folks were alive. He'd managed to ruin everything he'd touched, every life he'd entered. Laura wasn't coming back to him, and he'd walked away from his career. A whippoorwill called, greeting the night. It was only 7 p.m., but it was dark already. Soon, thought Jeff. Not long now. On the mantel above the stove sat a rusty coffee can. It had been there for as many of the 50 years of Jeff's life as he could remember. Taking it down, the jangle of coins filled the room. It startled him. Pieces of treasure, flat copper and zinc, silver and alloy spilled into his hand. Hello, memories, he thought. Ever since he could walk the distance, Pop would take him up to the tracks to make wishes. On special days, like his 13th birthday and his first day at his first job, Pop would present a $50 for him to use. Today he had 2 of them. Time to go home. Pocketing a few of the old memories, he put on his coat, blew out the lamps, and locked the door behind him. The trail was still there to lead him, but Jeff knew every inch of the land. Up on the rise, the tracks stretched into the dark tunnels of night to either side at the end of his flashlight beam. The whippoorwill called again. Nearly time, thought Jeff. Kneeling at the track, he placed 2 silver $50 on the beam. One wish, that Laura would be happy in her life. The other wish, that he didn't mess this up too. A shrill trill of train whistles screamed through the darkness, and the rumble followed. Jeff laid his head on the rail opposite his coins and stared at them one last time before turning off his flashlight. He could feel the power of the coal train coming, 3 engines hauling 45 cars of coal to Roanoke and points beyond. 3 minutes more, and it would be over. Jeff closed his eyes to the luminous light of the engine coming toward him. The whistle screamed his warning, loud and long. He felt a great shove to his shoulders and for a second thought it was the train, but realized it hadn't been as the engine flew past just inches from his head, blowing gusts of dust over him and into his tightly squeezed eyes. He was lying in the gravel, and he watched in shock as car after car rolled by. Something had shoved him. Someone had shoved him. Getting unsteadily to his feet as the rear engine passed, Jeff found his light and sought the darkness for his savior. No one was there. 5 feet from where he'd lain, his $2 flashed in the light, flattened beyond recognition. Jeff recognized it, though. Pop had saved him and left him a treasure to remember it by. In the darkness, he heard a faint call of his name. Laura had come. Time to go home. Perhaps both of his wishes had come true.